All right, bell ringer. Here we go. Here we go. So I know we reviewed it before, but I just want to make sure that we remember it's been a week now. Holy cow, a whole week. So describe the siege of Leningrad and how this was an impactful event at the start of Operation Barbarossa. There you go. So let you guys write that down. Like I said, I know we talked about it before, but it's been a whole week, so it's good to refresh what we already know. And it's going to be building up to what we're going to talk about today, about the Battle of Moscow, Operation Typhoon. Ooh, that's a cool name. I came up with all these cool operation names, that's for sure. Right?
Almost like a code name.
Code name. Typhoon. Godzilla sent a typhoon on King Kong. I remember I saw him looking into the camera and he goes, "That was for you, Blake. Mountain Dew coming your way."
You sure you're like not like, oh.
What? Maybe. When it comes to entertainment, I love it. Especially Godzilla. I guess you say superheroes too.
What else?
Fishing. Sports. Just finished up my kitchen.
That's good.
Yeah, so I can say that's manly stuff, huh? Not childish. Put a backsplash up.
Oh,
Paint the cabinets. Pumped up. So is that your brother with you for me Thursday?
Yeah.
Nice. How old's he?
11.
11. Were you guys getting good at the auction?
We got pretzel, whatever they are.
Oh, they look good.
Yeah.
I should have went up earlier for one of those. Sausage, egg, and cheese pretzel. They look good. I got tacos. Yeah.
what's for lunch today?
I don't know.
I think it's corn dog nuggets.
Ooh, that sounds good. That's how my brother met his best friend in elementary
Corn
school,
dog nuggets.
in kindergarten. He came up to me, he goes, first several words, he goes, "I remember it because his buddy was really heavy." Actually, he's related to Mr. Henninger.
Huh.
And
What are
he
you
comes
trying
up,
to say here?
he goes, "What's for lunch?" That's why I don't know why I always thought that was funny.
That's the whole story.
Yeah. My name's Kyle. What's for lunch? Nice to meet you, Kyle. I don't know. What's for lunch? That's what started their friendship.
Oh,
Kyle was pretty hefty.
Kyle was pretty happy.
Not anymore. But. All right, so what do we got here? Siege of Leningrad. What do we got? Jeffrey, what do you have, buddy?
Siege of Stalingrad, it was the prolonged military blockade undertaken from the south by the army group of Nazi Germany in the Soviet city of Leningrad. It was basically meant to stop the city from getting any sort of supplies such as food or military armaments.
Cut them off, right? Yeah, okay, good. What else?
Because this allowed them to get an easier route to start Operation Barbarossa and really start digging into the Soviet Union.
All right, yeah, good job. All right, so St. Petersburg, that's where it is, modern day St. Petersburg. Okay, and the German army surrounded it rather than invading it, wasting a lot of resources, men, risking men's lives there for that. The soldiers, they decided to encircle it, try to cut off any resources coming in. And at the same time, they had a little bit of help from some of their buddies, Finland. Yeah, they're kind of attacking into Leningrad at that time as well. So St. Petersburg, rather than invading it, the German army just surrounded it, cutting off any supplies and resources coming in. Around 1 million people died because of starvation, lack of fuel. Okay, many people froze to death because how cold it gets there. And this would last all the way up until 1944 when the German armies pushed out of that area. And the siege of Leningrad, like I mentioned, really not invading the city. Yeah, there's constant bombardment from artillery, Luftwaffe, but for the most part, it was just cutting off any type of resources coming in and out. Although the environment was devastating when it got real cold, obviously. Well, how is that helpful? How is that a benefit? Do you guys remember from the reading? Go ahead, Gracie.
So like frozen, they could the other countries could bring in supplies for them.
Yeah, good job, right? So Lake Ladoga, right, froze over and allowed for some of the Allied powers to send supplies over to try to help aid the people. So yeah, in a way, I guess you could say the freezing cold temperatures, although it killed many people, this froze over the lakes, bodies of water, allowed for transportation of supplies to help the people out. And we talked about it. There was really nowhere to really bury the bodies because the ground was frozen, obviously, and there was no location to do that. So they just kind of stacked them on the streets, and you can imagine how that had to look. And it just seemed like the end of the world for these people in Leningrad. And it was a really impactful, significant event because it just showed how brutal the German army were, how they were, and how devastating this event really was. Okay. So again, no invasion there, but constant bombardment of artillery, the Luftwaffe, and just cutting off resources coming in and out. All right, is there any questions on that? Can you imagine that in the summer and stand? Oh my gosh, couldn't imagine. Loved ones, friends piled up on the streets. Oh, it'd be a terrible, terrible sight. These people literally live in hell. Okay, vocab terms. Just 2 of them today. That's it. Just 2 of them. So moving on here, Operation Barbarossa. Now, there we go. So we'll talk about this today briefly. I have a political cartoon for you, and I'll be. You might look up. Yeah, I think the story will be good. How to explain the story like. Obviously, the teacher. Oh, really? You do like the real simple. And it's all happening. Yeah. So I guess I was going to try it. Got like a pencil, a glue on from the core. Yeah. All right, so what do we got? Operation Typhoon. What do we have here? Kiara, what do you have? Don't say the slide at Camelback Beach either.
It was like during the Battle of Moscow, and like military, like fighting.
Yeah, good. So this is, I guess you say, a sub operation underneath Barbarossa, trying to take over the Soviet Union, and Operation Typhoon was the taking of the capital, Moscow, right? Okay, that's what their goal was. Try to take the capital, crush the morale of the Soviets, and finish this war, make them surrender. Do you think Stalin's going to surrender, though? Troy, what do you think? No, probably not. if the capital falls, he'll be like, we'll just move it back, right? Move it back. I think I gave that joke before. You guys ever see SpongeBob where they just pick the city up to try to avoid the Alaskan bullworm? Pick it up, move it. And Patrick's leading the way. That's kind of what it seems like to me when I think of moving Moscow back and Stalin not surrendering. Yeah, so there you go, Operation Typhoon. This was the goal, the objective of the German army to try to take over Moscow, the capital. All right, we'll talk today how close he was and what maybe changes his plans, right? All right, Battle of Moscow. What do we have? What do you got here? 40?
It was a military campaign. It was a period of strategically significant fighting on the eastern side during World War II.
Yeah, good job, good job. So the German army comes right up to the doorstep, really. They took over a lot of key cities, towns, moving up into Moscow, but it just stops. It gets halted, and we'll talk about that more today. Okay, one of the main reasons why Operation Typhoon failed was because of the cold weather. Oh my gosh, go figure, right? So this cold weather kind of stopped everything. And at the same time, the Soviets, Soviet Union, although they went through these 5-year plans, do you think they're still as developed as these other Western European powers? No, they weren't. No, they weren't. So one of the main things that stopped them really was the lack of roads, bridges, railroad systems, right? They were all outdated. They weren't really created enough like what we see in Western Europe. So if you have no ways of transportation, it's going to be hard for the German army to try to take over Moscow. Yeah, around these heavily developed areas, you'll see a little bit more improvement, advancements with these roads and bridges. But for the most part, one of the main things was a lot of the key transport systems. It wasn't really developed well. Many of the German army, the tanks, the armored vehicles, they couldn't maneuver around in these areas. So I guess you could say the lack of development of the Soviet Union was a way to try to prevent the German army from advancing. So they didn't try it. If anything, it was kind of their lack of advancement, but it kind of helped them out, right? And then weather on top of that as well, which we'll talk about more when we get to Stalingrad. But the weather, many of these German soldiers, troops weren't prepared for it. They didn't have the equipment, the wardrobe for it. They didn't have the outfits to try to prepare them for this type of environment, the cold weather. But yeah, with Operation Typhoon, like I mentioned, this was really led by Blitzkrieg up until the cold weather ensued in Russia. Where are we at here? I had a map. Let me find a map here. There you go. Maybe I got rid of it. Sorry. Got a good picture of it. There we go. So this is kind of what it looks like of Operation Barbarossa and how Germany took over most of all of the western portion of the Soviet Union up until the doorstep of Moscow. Right here's Moscow, guys. You can see how close the German army really was from taking the capital city. Now, like I mentioned, once you capture the capital city, the war is pretty much over. We saw that with France and Paris, right? We saw that with many of these other countries once Germany was taking over in these large portions. And that's all thanks to Blitzkrieg. But there's something a little bit different about the Soviet Union. The sheer cold temperature, cold weather. All right, that's what really stopped this advancement of the German army. And because they were underdeveloped. They didn't really have the roads, the bridges. And many of the German soldiers' perspectives of this account, of this invasion, really was describing how muddy it really was. How the tanks, the armored vehicles just got stopped in their tracks because just the environment around. It's interesting. You see many pictures of these tanks and armored vehicles just stuck in the mud. It's like, oh, what the heck, man? It's unbelievable. How are we supposed to continue to advance? How are we supposed to continue to fight? And at this time, what is it, 1941, 1942, the German army has been fighting since 1939, right? All over Europe. They took over Poland. We talked about all the advancements, especially over here in France. Now they're shifting their attention all the way at the other end of Europe. You think these guys are tired? Oh yeah, for sure. They haven't seen their families or friends. They haven't been home for many, many years, and just the long, I guess you could say, the long fighting and the constant battle, it really got to these soldiers, these troops. But real quick, with Moscow, this invasion of Moscow, it really didn't happen, right? It stopped pretty much at the doorstep, okay, of Moscow. And it was becoming a total war where women, children were out trying to dig these anti-tank, anti-tank, I guess say lands, and making sure that they could put that many different obstacles out to try to prevent the German huge iron crosses. Okay, that's what they use to try to prevent these tanks and armored vehicles from traveling in certain locations. But in Moscow, still today, they have these huge red anti-tank, I guess you could say, obstacles out in Moscow. It's pretty cool to see. They still have them out. There's just 3 huge big ones alongside this major highway that's there now. It just showed how far the German army was to Moscow. And I think it's pretty cool that they kind of pay tribute to exactly where they stopped that advancement. So if you have time, check that picture out. It's pretty cool. Okay, maybe I can find it towards the end of the lesson here. But it was interesting how they did it. So women, children were out digging these different types of tunnels and trying to form these different obstacles to prevent the German army from actually getting to the doorstep of Moscow. And with major political buildings, industries, factories, they actually disguised the buildings. It was pretty neat. So they painted the rooftops different colors to try to, I guess you could say, confuse the German Luftwaffe from targeting these buildings, especially the one where Lenin was buried at, where his tomb was. They tried to disguise it. They tried to make it look like a regular town home. So it's like, we don't know if this is the actual target we want to destroy to cripple the morale, or an industry, right, a factory where there's a lot of production there. So they started painting different rooftops, building different buildings around these major locations to try to avoid the German army from overtaking them and bombing them and targeting them to try to crush their morale, which I thought was pretty interesting, right? It's like, oh, they're disguising their buildings and really changing the landscape of their city, their capital, to try to throw off the German army. Right? But with Moscow, in many ways, people say it was a success for the German army, how close they got to Moscow, because they later shift their attention to another city. Like, you know what? Moscow, yeah, it's heavily populated. Okay, it's going to be a hard city to take over. It's their capital. But they knew that, Stalin's not going to give up. Okay, they'll just continue to move the, I guess you could say, the capital back to make sure that, the Germans really don't fully take over the Soviet Union. Okay, and that Stalin was really never going to give up. Okay, and like I said, with the weather, that was one of the main reasons what stopped this invasion. But Hitler decided to do something different. So he stopped at Moscow and shifted his attention to a different city. And what city was that? For those of you who have American history, we already went over this. What was it? Kiara, you said it earlier. Stalingrad. Yep, good job, Stalingrad. And there's many reasons why the German army would want Stalingrad. Okay, why they're interested in it, why they would want to take it over. Okay, there's a lot of valuable, I guess you say, resources which we'll talk about. Okay, many of the things which says it really in the name of why the German army would want to shift their attention to Stalingrad. Why they thought that was a little bit more of a significant city to take over. Okay, but with Moscow, like I mentioned, one of the main things was Stalin's never going to give up. Okay, even if they take the capital city, it's really not going to mean too much to them. Yes, they'd like to maybe stop it, but for the most part, the German army was halted. There was a lot of Soviet counteroffensives here at Moscow, which tried to push back the German army, which they're successful at doing. Okay, and it really showed that the Soviets actually had some better ways of strategizing and setting up and establishing these counteroffensives and utilizing the weapons that they have to their advantage. And many of the soldiers actually that kind of helped the Soviets won this battle was really these people from the Siberian Peninsula that were, I guess you could say, used to this weather and used to this different type of environment. Okay, they were trained soldiers for this environment and could fight in these different types of elements. And like I mentioned, I thought it was interesting to throw in that that they're disguising many of their buildings in Moscow so that the Luftwaffe, the artillery, wouldn't target them. Okay, because they know that that would crush some morale. Right? It's like they didn't. It's like they didn't want to have the same thing what happened to France. Remember with Hitler posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, getting right in front of the train car. He'd probably do the same thing in Moscow, right? In front of their Capitol buildings, in front of their unique architectural buildings. Okay, they wanted to try to prevent that. All right, is there any questions on that? You guys good? So I have a political cartoon assigned for you that should have been posted now. That's really describing